The Dalai Lama often returns to a very simple reminder, not as a method, not as a technique, but as a gentle pointing. You don't need to struggle to awaken, you only need to see clearly. At first, this may sound too easy, but perhaps it feels easy because something in you already knows it. Most of the time, we believe the mind needs to be fixed. We try to calm it. We try to improve it. We look for another method, another practice, another answer. But the Dalai Lama points to something else. When seeing is clear, the mind adjusts by itself. No extra effort is needed. No new technique is required. Observation, in this sense, is not something you do. It is not a skill to master. It is a doorway to wisdom that opens the moment you stop interfering. Nothing is pushed away. Nothing is pulled closer. The mind is simply allowed to show itself. In this video, we are not trying to control the mind. We are gently looking at what it means to observe the mind, how observation happens naturally, why observation reveals the whole structure of the mind, and why the Dalai Lama calls this a complete path. If awakening does not come from effort, what actually changes when we simply see? When the Dalai Lama speaks about observation, he is not talking about looking at the mind as if it were an object. He is pointing to something more intimate. The mind is luminous by nature. Simply recognize that luminosity. This luminosity is not something you create. It is not something you reach. It is the quiet clarity that has always been present, even before any thought appears. Observation begins when this clarity gently recognizes itself. This is not seeing with the eyes. There is no distance, no watcher standing apart. Observation here means the mind allowing itself to be known. Awareness, noticing awareness. No effort is added. No one is doing the observing. There is only this simple recognition. Knowing is already happening. Because of this, observation does not require effort. Effort always creates a doer, and a doer always brings tension. The Dalai Lama reminds us that awakening does not come from trying harder. It comes when effort softens and control relaxes. Thoughts may still arise. Feelings may still move. Observation does not stop them. It simply does not interfere. Observation is not about destroying thoughts. It is not about finding a peaceful state. It is not about forcing concentration. It is allowing everything to appear exactly as it is. Seeing without pushing away. Seeing without holding on. This is why observation feels spacious. Nothing is being corrected. Nothing is being judged. So what changes when we simply see? Not the thoughts, not the emotions. What changes is the relationship. When observation is present, energy no longer flows into resistance or grasping. Seeing replaces reacting. And when reaction stops being fed, tension begins to dissolve on its own. Nothing is pushed away. Nothing is fixed. But something subtle happens. The mind stops collapsing into what it experiences. Thoughts are seen as movements. Feelings are felt as sensations. They no longer form a solid story called me. This is why observation feels freeing without trying to be free. This way of observing is not limited to one tradition. In Theravada, it is known as vipassana. In Mahayana, it is the wisdom of prajna, seeing the empty nature of experience. In Vajrayana, it is rigpa, recognizing the nature of mind. The Dalai Lama does not separate these paths. He points to the same essence, pure observation. When observation becomes this natural, when nothing is added and nothing is resisted, something begins to unfold in daily life. If seeing is this simple, how do we actually observe the mind in everyday moments? Observation sounds simple. Just see. Just know. But in real life, especially at the beginning, it is not easy at all. You try to observe and suddenly you are already lost in a thought. You try to stay aware, and the emotion has already pulled you away. This is not a mistake. This is exactly how the early stage feels. In the beginning, awareness is still soft. Habitual patterns are strong. The ego is very quick to take over again. So when you observe, the mind will drift. Again and again. The Dalai Lama reminds us that this does not mean you are doing it wrong. It simply means old habits are still louder than awareness. Here is the most important point. Observation does not mean you should never be carried away. It means you notice when you have been carried away. The moment you realize, oh, I was lost in thought, awareness is already present. You don't need to rush back. You don't need to fix anything. Just stay with that noticing. In daily life, observation looks like this. A thought appears. You know there is a thought. An emotion arises. You know there is an emotion. Not, I'm thinking. I'm angry. Just thinking is happening. Anger is present. This small shift creates space. The Dalai Lama calls this seeing without identification. Anger appears. You don't push it away. You don't follow the story. You simply know anger is here. Worry appears. You don't try to calm it. You don't argue with it. You simply know worry is present. Nothing else is needed. When you see this way, something subtle changes. Energy no longer collapses into reaction. The body tightens less. The breath shortens less. Emotion is allowed to move without being fed. This is why observation works, even when nothing is being fixed. Not because you control the mind, but because you stop fueling it. You will lose awareness many times. This is normal. Each time you notice you are lost, awareness becomes a little stronger. Not by force, not by discipline, but by being remembered. This is how awareness learns to stand on its own. As observation matures, something deeper becomes visible. Not just thoughts and emotions, but the whole structure behind them. If simple daily observation already loosens the mind this much, what becomes visible when observation deepens further? The Dalai Lama often explains that wisdom does not come from adding something to the mind. It comes from seeing clearly what is already there. Observation, in his teaching, is not a partial practice. It is complete because it allows the mind to understand itself exactly as it is. When observation is steady, the first thing that becomes clear is the body. Sensations change. Posture shifts. Breath moves on its own. You begin to see directly that the body is never fixed. This is not philosophy. It is experience. The Dalai Lama reminds us that seeing impermanence is the beginning of wisdom, not to reject the body, but to stop clinging to it. As observation deepens, emotions come into clear view. Feelings arise because of causes and conditions. They stay for a moment, then change. Even intense emotions cannot remain. This is how suffering is understood in the Dalai Lama's teaching. Not as pain itself, but as the instability of conditioned experience. When this is seen clearly, grasping begins to soften. Then thoughts reveal their nature. Thoughts appear. They narrate. They dissolve. When observed carefully, no permanent thinker can be found. Thoughts arise dependent on conditions, not on a fixed self. The Dalai Lama often emphasizes that this insight into non-self is not meant to erase identity, but to release attachment to a false one. As body, emotions, and thoughts are observed in this way, their disappearance becomes clear. Nothing holds, nothing stays. This is what the Dalai Lama calls the insight into emptiness. Emptiness does not mean nothingness. It means no experience exists independently, by itself. Everything arises through causes and conditions and therefore can dissolve. When grasping relaxes, space becomes noticeable. Not empty space, but open clarity. Awareness remains present whether something appears or disappears. The Dalai Lama explains that this awareness is not created by meditation. It is the natural clarity of the mind when obscurations are not reinforced. At a deeper level, even the sense of being the one who is observing can be examined. When observation continues without effort or expectation, this observer is also seen as a mental construction. And when the observer dissolves, clarity remains. This is what the Dalai Lama refers to as liberation through wisdom. Not something dramatic, but the natural freedom that comes from understanding reality. This is why the Dalai Lama says that observation is the complete path. Through observation alone, impermanence is understood. Suffering is understood. Non-self is understood. Emptiness is realized. Awareness is recognized. Nothing needs to be added. Nothing needs to be removed. Seeing clearly is enough. If observation reveals impermanence, suffering, non-self, emptiness, and even the dissolving of the observer, how does the mind actually move through these layers of seeing? When the Dalai Lama speaks about levels of awareness, he does not describe something to achieve. These are not stages you must climb and not experiences you must collect. They are simply different ways the mind is understood when observation becomes clearer. Nothing new is added, nothing special is created. The mind is only being seen more honestly, more deeply. At the beginning, the mind is fully identified with thinking. A thought appears, and immediately there is belief. We become the story. We react without seeing. At this level, there is no distance between awareness and thought. Observation begins very simply here. You start to notice, this is a thought, not true or false, just a thought. This small recognition is the first opening of freedom. As observation continues, movement becomes visible. Thoughts arise. They stay briefly. They disappear. The Dalai Lama often explains that the mind is not a solid thing. It is a process. Seeing thoughts come and go reveals this directly. At this level, the belief in permanence weakens. You begin to sense that nothing in the mind can truly be held. With more clarity, a sense of distance appears. You are no longer inside the thought. You are aware of it. The Dalai Lama says, this distance is the seed of wisdom. This distance is not separation. It is understanding. The mind begins to see without being carried away. Here, awareness and experience are no longer confused as one. As this distance stabilizes, reaction weakens. Thoughts still arise. Emotions still appear, but they no longer dictate action. The Dalai Lama calls this akhyana, not being led by habit or karma. You see clearly, yet you are not pulled. This is where observation begins to transform daily life. Freedom is no longer abstract. It becomes practical. As observation becomes stable, something subtle but important appears. There is space between awareness and experience. Thoughts still arise. Emotions still come and go, but they no longer occupy the whole field. The Dalai Lama explains that this space is not emptiness in a negative sense. It is clarity without attachment. You are present with experience, but you are not entangled in it. Nothing needs to be fixed. Nothing needs to be suppressed. Because when there is space, experience resolves itself. This is why, at this level, clinging naturally weakens. Not through effort, but through understanding. With continued observation, even the sense of being the observer can be gently examined. You may notice that the observer is also an experience. It arises. It has a subtle position, and it can dissolve. When this happens, awareness remains without a center. The Dalai Lama emphasizes that this is not a special state. It is simply the mind recognizing its own nature. Awareness is clear, open, and knowing, without effort. This is why he says, you are not becoming awareness. You are recognizing it. Nothing new is created. Nothing personal is gained. Confusion falls away, and what remains is the mind's natural clarity. These 6 levels do not unfold because you try. They reveal themselves when observation is steady and gentle. You do not move through them, they become visible. This is why the Dalai Lama teaches observation as a complete path. Seeing clearly is enough. If observation unfolds so naturally, why do so many people still get stuck, confused, or frustrated along the way? The Dalai Lama often reminds us that even a correct teaching can become distorted if it is misunderstood. Observation itself is simple, but the mind easily turns it into another project, another goal, another identity. This is not a mistake to blame. It is something to understand. One common misunderstanding is observing in order to feel peaceful. We watch the mind hoping discomfort will disappear. When peace does not come, frustration arises. The Dalai Lama explains that this turns observation into a subtle form of grasping. Peace becomes an object, and the mind starts chasing it. Another mistake is observing to stop thinking. Thoughts appear, and we silently resist them. This creates tension. The Dalai Lama reminds us that thinking is not the problem. Identification is. Trying to silence the mind only strengthens the sense of control. A deeper trap is observing in order to awaken. There is a subtle idea. I am the one who is practicing. This creates what the Dalai Lama calls spiritual ego. Awakening becomes an achievement. Observation becomes effort, and clarity is replaced by striving. Right observation begins with not forcing. Nothing is pushed away. Nothing is invited. Thoughts come, thoughts go. Awareness does not interfere. The Dalai Lama emphasizes that when force ends, clarity increases naturally. There is no expectation of result, no peace to reach, no state to maintain. Observation is complete in each moment of seeing. This releases the pressure to become someone else. Right observation does not exclude experience. Sadness is allowed. Confusion is allowed. At the same time, nothing is held. Experience is free to arise and dissolve. This is how awareness functions on its own. When observation is right, awareness does the work. You do not need to manage it. The Dalai Lama often points out that wisdom is not manufactured. It is revealed when interference stops. This is why correct observation feels simple, open, and kind. If the correct observation is this simple and natural, why is this simple observation more relevant than ever in a fast and overstimulated world? The Dalai Lama often points out that the modern mind is not weak. It is overloaded. Too much information, too many roles, too many inner voices pulling in different directions. The mind is constantly stimulated, but rarely allowed to rest in clarity. This is the condition most people are living with today. In such conditions, methods that require long rituals, strong concentration, or rigid discipline often become another burden. People feel they are failing before they even begin. The Dalai Lama emphasizes that a path must match its time. If a method increases pressure, it cannot lead to liberation. Observation does not add anything to an already crowded mind. It does not demand silence. It does not require special posture. It does not ask you to withdraw from life. You observe while walking, while working, while feeling overwhelmed. This is why the Dalai Lama says that in this age, observation itself is meditation. Observation brings the mind back into direct contact with what is actually happening. Not an ideal version of yourself, not a spiritual image to maintain. Just this moment, just this experience. In a fragmented world, this directness is healing. Clarity replaces control. Understanding replaces struggle. The Dalai Lama often teaches that true practice must integrate into life. If awareness only appears on the cushion, it cannot transform suffering. Observation works because it does not divide practice and living. Every emotion becomes material for wisdom. Every situation becomes part of the path. This is why observation is not a simplified path. It is a precise path, precise enough to meet the complexity of modern life without adding more weight. In a world that constantly pulls the mind outward, observation gently brings it home. Observation is not meant to create a special state. It is not here to make the mind calm, bright, or different. Observation is simply a way of seeing. And when seeing is clear, nothing needs to be fixed. When the nature of experience is seen, the mind naturally settles. Not because someone brings it back, not because effort succeeds, but because confusion is no longer fed. The mind does not need guidance when it is understood. This is the quiet beauty of pure observation. Nothing dramatic happens, nothing special is claimed, yet something essential is remembered, a clarity that has always been here. Awareness is not something you create. It is something you recognize. And perhaps, in this recognition, the journey gently rests.